Now there is only one game between two teams with a winning record, the New York Giants versus the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks, who are leading the NFC West, and I don't know what to really do with that information. Similarly, the New York Giants, who have only lost one game to division rival Dallas. Who are you more impressed by with what they've been able to do to this point in the season?
Well, I'd have to go with the Giants because, I mean, the Giants shouldn't be 6-1, but I didn't think there was any scenario where the Giants would be 6-1, nearly a lock to make the playoffs over both the Rams and the Packers. And some of that is Giants, some of that is Packers, some of that is macro level changes in the NFL, like how offense is at its second lowest total since 2000 this year, as defenses play double high safeties and offenses just run less plays than they have in past years. It's not like they're adjusting by running the ball more. They're just running less plays in general. So that has benefited the New York Giants. And they also have won all of their one possession games, which is certainly helpful. So I'll go with the Giants to be the team that I am most, shall we say, impressed by. Because Seattle, I will give you props. You are better than the Cardinals. And I did not think that would be the case going into the season.
When it comes to Seattle, I think I'm more impressed by them because I thought that they were a team tearing it down. They were a team that came into the season with a chip on their shoulder. We just traded away Russell Wilson. We traded away our best franchise quarterback in the history of our team, and we're still here. We haven't gone away. Pete Carroll, we thought this was just kind of his walk off into the sunset type of year when he decided to make the decision to move off Russell Wilson, and yet standing again at the top of the division. And yes, that's partially to blame on the Niners. That's partially to blame on the Rams. The fact that, again, the Seahawks are once again in this position with less talent on the roster, I think it's hard to ignore what Pete's been able to do with this team. What Pete's been able to do to find the value in Geno Smith, the value that everyone didn't notice. And yes, Geno isn't the quarterback that he was through the first 4 weeks in the season, but he still hasn't really fallen off. He's still amongst the top of the league in terms of QBR, completion percentage. It's still all very good numbers for Geno. In fact, he hit a touchdown to Marquise Goodwin. Surprise, Marquise Goodwin's in the league still, but he hit a touchdown to him this week that catapulted them over a team that we came into the year, at least some pundits said, Super Bowl favorites, Super Bowl contenders. The Los Angeles Chargers, they've fallen on hard times, but the Seattle Seahawks, they don't give a shit about that. They were happy to take advantage of that, and Kenneth Walker is now looking like a top-tier running back in the NFL, was a top-tier running back in college last year, and that is translated to the NFL. So as much as it pains me to say, I got to give the Seahawks their due. Obviously, again, Niners fan, I don't really love doing it. It's not something that comes out of my mouth easily, but the Seahawks have been infinitely better than I thought they were. And I don't think that they're going to go away in this playoff picture. At bare minimum, they're going to be competing for a wild card, even if the Niners or the Rams are able to overtake them in the division. I think that they're still a team that we could see them easily fall into that 7th seed.
Yeah, you mentioned Marquise Goodwin, which for anyone who knows the story of him and his family, that's just a really good story to root for. We should be rooting for Marquise Goodwin. That's a really feel-good story.
Oh, his touchdown, CJ Beathard, after his wife's miscarriage, still one of the most heartwarming moments in sports and Niners fans' history. We'll always remember Marquise Goodwin for at least that.
Yeah, and Marquise Goodwin was at home during the Super Bowl and after the Super Bowl, he got the news that they were finally going to have a child after 3 or 4 miscarriages. It's a fun story to root for. So root for that. On a transitional note, I love that Pete Carroll has finally gone to the Mel Tucker strategy of just ripping heaters and calling cool plays for Kenneth Walker.
Well, it's what he wanted to do, right?
Strategy.
It's what Pete Carroll's been dreaming to do for years.
Is just rip heaters, call plays for Kenneth Walker, and make $95 million.
Rashad Penny or whoever it would be, basically just any running back that was in that room. Chris Carson, before he got hurt. The idea was, Russ, you can cook as a side cook, as a sous chef. We want to let the running backs in the ground game cook. And if you can contribute to the sauce, give us a nice bechamel, that's fine. That's what the Seahawks wanted to do. And the let Russ cook movement kind of superseded that at points. We know the stories came out that there was a conflict in that locker room on who would get the ultimate win. And Russ got the win in terms of getting out of Seattle, but it doesn't look like it was for the better when you look at where the standings are currently sitting today.
And remember, it's that offense that took Marshawn Lynch from being a good running back in Buffalo, a pretty decent running back in Buffalo, to a Hall of Famer in Seattle. Let's not get that twisted. There is evidence behind this. I think that the greater solution now is just they finally gave him a super talented running back. And look, I'm San Diego State. My family went to San Diego State. I watched Rashad Penny. Not disrespecting Rashad Penny at all. Just should not have been a first round pick. He is not the running back that Kenneth Walker is.
He was coming on strong towards the end, and I feel for Rashad Penny that he got hurt because he was really starting to turn the corner in his career. In fact, I thought that him and Kenneth Walker could have made a nice 1-2 punch. Hell, if Chris Carson, similar type thing, didn't get hurt, could have been a nice 1-2 punch in addition to this offense. Yeah. Instead, it's Kenneth Walker, and knock on wood, hopefully for Kenneth Walker, he continues to stay healthy because he is an awesome NFL running back. He's an awesome running back and an awesome addition to this offense. We don't know what to do with Geno Smith. I think it's the tough one, right? As much as we want to doubt and downplay his role and his contribution to this team, he's been in the NFC one of the better quarterbacks on the year. It's hard to dispute, and maybe that speaks more to the NFC. It's a results-oriented business, and Geno Smith has gained the results.
Yeah. We can't be trusted to talk sensibly about Geno Smith at this point because he has looked absolutely incredible. And that losing DK Metcalf is certainly going to hurt as they go forward here. I think he's going to be out for an extended period of time.
Bare minimum, he's going to get the Teddy Bridgewater treatment, which will mean a lot of cash for Geno Smith.
I guess someone who's the team that's going to pay a lot of money for it might actually be the Seahawks. The Seahawks might actually be the team that gives them the $20 million a year.
Indianapolis is looking.
I think it might actually be Seattle. It might be the rare situation where he gets paid by the team that ended up propping him up in the first place. But yeah, I think Geno's finally going to get that Teddy Bridgewater payday of $50 million over 2 years
coming in from the Denver Broncos, and the Broncos are bad. Yeah. So that way to turn around your organization.
It's almost as if they would have been Hall of Famers guaranteed for that run that they had with the Legion of Boom, both John Schneider and Pete Carroll, if they hadn't gone 6 years of winning more games than any team that never made a conference championship. This isn't the year for Seattle, I don't think. They are going to probably start to slide a little bit once they get those. I mean, they beat Arizona, so I don't want to say that Arizona is a good team this year.
And I'm not going to give them an easy win against the Niners because over the last decade and even pre-Russ, Pete Carroll and the Seahawks were getting wins against the San Francisco 49ers. Different regimes, I know, but when I think about who's the better coaches in the league, Pete's put himself back up there amongst the top. I told you in the Chargers matchup that he was going to run circles around Brandon Staley, and lo and behold, he ran circles around Brandon Staley. Pete can come up with a game plan.
You say he's back in that category. He never left for me. Like, I look at Pete as like he's one of those 8 coaches that adds value in the NFL. And there's only 8 that I can think of. And it's hard to come up with 8 because every other coach is disposable in that sport. Is
Brian Daboll a coach that adds value?
We're going to need a larger sample size to evaluate that. It took John Harbaugh like 8 years to evaluate it in 2022. Then my answer is I don't know. I don't know. And we cannot possibly
give me an answer.
Know. But I don't know. I can't.
We have sample size. We have games.
No, like I was saying, we have 7 games of Daboll. It took 7 years and winning a Super Bowl for us to think John Harbaugh was good. Them. Well, let's not do that.
You don't think is very good.
I will say, actually, so I watched a Giants game for the first time with like actual intent when they were playing the Jaguars. Now, in fairness, I was going between that and the Padres-Phillies game, but this was the first time since week 6 of last year that I actually watched a Giants game with intent. And I have to say, Daniel Jones didn't look terrible. And I will say, Daniel Jones, they don't see a future with Daniel Jones. They were just like, why would we replace him when he's cheap? He's cheap and he's cheap. And we're kind of just looking for a transitional quarterback anyways. So like they just kind of said, whatever, we'll keep him for a year and he'll have a meaningless playoff game, it looks like, because the New York Giants are 6-1, despite having the same plus minus as the 2-5 Jacksonville Jaguars, who again, the Jaguars were 1.5 yards away from beating the Giants last week. And Jacksonville
But you get credit for winning the 1-score games. We rail on the Vikings for losing those 1-score games. We got to give credit when teams win the 1-score games.
Well, yeah, like it's the reason the Giants are not a playoff team, but at a certain point, if you win enough one-score games, you're going to make the playoffs anyways. But like the same bullshit happened with the Eagles last year, and they lost 30-0 once they got there. Like it's a bullshit playoff team that's going to get there because they win a lot of one possession.
Well, here's
games.
the thing, though. It's not like, okay, I could see like complete bullshit if we were talking about them beating the dregs of the league, but they have wins against Baltimore. They have wins against the Packers. They've started to turn the corner in terms of beating good teams. And when I look at the rest of their schedule and we start talking about this playoff picture coming to fruition, this is obviously a big game here against Seattle. This is a game that has major wildcard implications. But then you get beyond that. They got the Texans and Lions back to back. Have an opportunity to get a little bit of a revenge against the Cowboys. They have the Commanders twice to end the year. They have the Eagles. They have the Vikings. They have this Colts team that we talked about, Sam Ehlinger, another video, go check that out. But we talked about Sam Ehlinger. He's going to be starting by that point. We have the Eagles to end the year. They only need a split with the Eagles to earn respect in terms of that division. But if they could just, sweep the games in which, in theory, a team that is 6-1 should be able to beat the Texans, should be able to beat the Lions, should be able to beat the Commanders. They're pretty much in. Like, I don't want to jinx it. I'm sure there's some Giants fans that are cursing me, like, don't jinx it. Don't jinx it. We got in this far, but you guys are pretty much in. You guys you have a clause to fuck up the rest of the year and still be in the playoffs.
But why do we pretend like just because you make the playoffs, it makes you a good team? Like there's bullshit playoff teams every year in the NFL. Last year, where there were 4 of them in the playoffs last year, like bullshit teams make the playoffs all the time.
Yes,
and that's just.
But there's bullshit teams that make the playoffs with a 8-9 record. Again, if the Giants have lost one game.
Yeah. And they'll be, I have to acknowledge at this point that they're probably going to be a wild card team because that is the most probable outcome. And I hate every time they say that they beat the Ravens. The Ravens kicked their ass for 56 and a half minutes. And then Lamar Jackson threw a pick and fumbled the ball at the end of the game because he threw up on himself. And I'm so mad at Lamar Jackson for doing that, because if the Giants were 5-2, people would be talking about them more sanely than if they were 6-1. The Ravens lost to the Giants. The Giants did not beat the Ravens. The Ravens lost to the Giants, and they threw up on themselves. I will say that, but it's
then
it's
don't
a small
throw up on
change.
yourself. We talked about the Ravens. Stop blowing
but it
games.
doesn't make the Giants better. Like what the Giants have to do to not be a bullshit team is to actually play like a great team. Like the New York Giants are just like all of these 7-10 teams that are all going to end up.
Are they not a great team because they're not great by your standards? And when you define great team as your standards, just like they need to be blowing everyone out by 30.
No, just evidence that suggests that they're not a team that should be 4-3 that happens to be 6-1. Like that's kind of the point there is like they are as good as the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are as good as all of these 7-8 win teams on paper. Like 16 teams in the NFL this year are like 7 or 8 wins on paper, and the Giants are in that group.
So like, let me ask you, like, when did you buy into the 2019 San Francisco 49ers?
I got to be honest, I picked the Packers to win the NFC Championship game. I picked the Packers.
Because I go back to that year, and I remember the Niners were not expected to be there. They were probably a fringe playoff team to some, but when you start a season 8-0, at a certain point, it becomes hard to ignore. And even throughout that year, I remember it's like, oh, they haven't beat anyone tough. They haven't beat anyone tough. And then suddenly you just start looking at the schedule and you looking at the wins, and you're like, damn, okay. Well, because we historically, we've seen a Giants team that is this bad in terms of personnel win a Super Bowl.
What do the New York Giants do that's great? And I know you're probably going to say rushing the football. You're going to say they run the football great. They run the football above average. And Dan Orlovsky has a great analysis from this week on his Twitter where it's like they called the exact same run play 9 times out of 10 plays on that final drive against the Jaguars. Like they are doing some, as he described it, sicko shit in order to get these wins, which is
we
fine.
asked ourselves, and going back to the Brian Daboll question was, what would Brian Daboll bring from Buffalo to New York? And he's not able to run necessarily with Buffalo's offense because Daniel Jones isn't the quarterback that Josh Allen is. However, he does have some traits that are similar to what Josh Allen is able to do, particularly when it comes to his legs. That's why Daniel Jones, to this point through week 8, has outrushed Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Najee Harris, a number of your other favorite running backs. And it's not pretty, but what Daniel Jones also is not doing this year, he's not turning over the ball, which if you can not turn over the ball, you can run the ball well, and you can play defense and play opportunistic defense, you're going to win a lot of games in the National Football League.
Ooh, correction. You're going to win 7 games in the National Football League. If you do all those things, you will win 7 games in a season in the National Football League, where the difference for the Giants is that they have happened to win some bullshit 1-score games that happen to get them to 6-1. So instead of being the 8-win team on paper that they are, which by the way is a massive improvement from where we thought they were going to be at the start of the season. The difference between the 4-win team they were projected to be and that 8-win team they are on paper is credit to Dayball, credit to getting the most out of a depleted roster.
See, again, in the original question we asked too was who you're more impressed with. I think I'm more impressed with Seattle because they were able to come off an offseason where everyone thought that they were trying to be bad, versus I know the Giants were trying to be good coming into this year. I knew the Giants were making moves that they thought would legitimately help them win games in the short term and long term. And we're seeing the short-term results happen. We didn't expect it to happen this soon. When you hire a new coach, and when they hired Brian Daboll, they were hoping that eventually they would turn into something like this. Everyone's blown away by the fact that it happened in year 1.
Well, I don't think it has happened yet. The reason I said I'm more impressed with the Giants is that they look like, again, a team that doesn't turn the ball over, runs the ball consistently, wins these like grinded out 21-17 games like they did against the Titans and the Jaguars, and Baltimore threw up on themselves, and that's on Baltimore. Like the fact that they've won those.
Again, I would say the 2019 San Francisco 49ers had to grind a lot of ones out.
Well, the difference is the 2019 San Francisco 49ers had great players. The 2022 New York Giants don't have great players on their team. They have a bunch of dudes
that have great players. They had
game.
Saquon Barkley is a great player, right?
No, Saquon Barkley is a very good player. Saquon Barkley is a player that we were talking about him getting cut in the offseason. That's not a great player.
Kayvon Thibodeau?
Kayvon Thibodeau is a young, emerging, very good player. That's not a great player yet. He's not.
So
even
what do they got to do for you to buy in? Because I mentioned
score 30 points in a game. Score 30 points in a football game.
Okay, it's just because you disagree with how they're able to win games, because they don't have the high flying offense. So it tells me that your idea of what a great team is strictly based around having a great offense.
Well, the New York Giants' strength of their team is their offense. They're ranked 13th in the league in DVOA in offense and 21st in the league in defense. The strength of their team is built on their offense this season. The New York Giants have gotten to this point because they dominate time of possession, they run the football, and at the end of these games, their strength of their team
I know
is built
you
on
love
offense.
the DVOA stat, but at a certain point, you held Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens to 20 points. You held Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers to 22 points. That tells me that their defense is better than that 21st ranking that you are throwing out there.
Totally fair. Their defense has been good this year, which we thought it was going to be terrible. And the New York Giants have gotten to this place because of, like we talked about at the very beginning, they've won every single 1-score game that they've played in this season. If we argue that 1-score games are toss-ups, then...
But winning 1-score games is a skill.
Yes and no. Yes and no. It's a skill, but also we've watched 1-score football games. Like a half an inch sometimes determines the outcome of a football game. A yard and a half against the Jaguars determines the outcome.
Here's why I'll give them more credit too
game.
in those 1-score games, because Daniel Jones has also had to lead multiple comeback winning drives in that stretch of games. That's something we haven't seen from Daniel Jones in his career. And I don't know if it signals a turnaround, because I still want to see more from him. I don't know if he has more in the tank, but I still want to see more from him. But that's a resiliency that we hadn't seen from the New York Giants, especially in Daniel Jones' tenure.
So where this becomes like, you know how I said at the beginning, they're like a bullshit playoff team, is like they will get crushed by who they play in the wild card round. Now, if it's Tampa, that might be a different scenario because Tampa's offense is inept also. But if they play San Francisco, Dallas, the Eagles, I guess Minnesota would kind of be in this group. Like there's a lot of BS teams in the NFC in general, but they will get crushed by those teams.
I don't know if I can say that. I don't know if I could co-sign that with 100% certainty, because the Niners, what I can't make it the Niners. I just saw the Atlanta Falcons run the ball all over them, control time of possession, and make it very difficult on their offense. I look around the NFC. I saw the Carolina Panthers hold the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to 3 points. The Green Bay Packers, I've seen them beat the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
The Vikings,
that's the crazy part.
I told you, I think the Vikings are a soft team. And when it comes to the Eagles, they'll have a chance to play the Eagles twice this year. And if they play them in the playoffs, then we get into the old thing about playing a team 3 times. And I don't like the chances in any of those games where you have to play a division rival in the playoffs.
This is the crazy part, is there a scenario where the Giants could somehow be a BS playoff team and still be a top 4 team in the NFC? This might be the first time I can actually say yes to that, because I'm picking the New York Giants to beat the Seattle Seahawks this week and advance to 7-1. Are they a BS team? Yes. Are the Seahawks also a BS team? Kind of, but they're only 4-3. So we're not hyperventilating about the Seahawks the same way we're all hyperventilating about the New York Football Giants. It is possible that they can be a BS team that doesn't do anything great and also might be a top 4 team in the NFC. It's a really weird football season, isn't it?
I wanted to give the Seahawks a home boost, but injury report news, DK Metcalf was carted off in the last game, so they're going to take a hit at the wide receiver position. And while they're not a team driven by their outside wide receivers in Lockett and Metcalf, they are a team that on broken plays knows how to utilize those guys. That's going to impact them in this game. That's why I'm also going to say that the New York Giants are going to win. They're very similar teams in many ways. As crazy as it sounds, they're going to be 7-1 after this weekend. But maybe you disagree. Let us know below in the comments section. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on our social medias. And stay safe, happy, and healthy. From Kyle Ledbetter and Juju. We'll see you next time.